Hello and welcome back to the Keep Right On podcast, where I'm joined by Brian Dick for the second time this week. Brian, they're like buzzers, aren't they? You know, you wait a week for a podcast from us and you get two within days. We're here to preview the West Bromwich Albion game. I say preview, it is a pre-season game, but we are now at the end of pre-season. So this podcast, to lay the table, is going to be about our findings from pre-season, really, the winners and losers of pre-season, what we think the 11 will be in the West Bromwich Albion dress rehearsal, discussing a number of names, and then obviously moving on to questions from supporters. Had a lot of questions, and again, thank you very much for that, because it takes up a good chunk of the podcast. We're not able to get around to all of them, but we've taken a selection of different ones to address at the end. Brian, are you all good?
I am. They're like what? Buzzies?
Oh, that's my accent, so.
Okay, right. Yeah.
Buzzes.
Yeah, I'm well, thank you. As you say, one pre-season game to go. I think we're expecting the West Brom game to be a bit of a dress rehearsal, aren't we? That's usually the way it goes. Just 1 week before the season starts.
Yeah, I think so. Who was it last year? God, Peterborough, and that proved to be a weird one. The final pre-season game is always the dress rehearsal, isn't it? I think it will be for West Brom as well, because their season starts a week later. And it'll be good for Blues because they played West Brom in two very different games last season, outclassed them in the first, and then obviously narrowly lost in the second, but quite evenly matched teams, even though one got relegated and one finished in the playoffs. I think there's a feeling around Blues this year that they're actually better in terms of the squad than they were last year. In my eyes, they're certainly a more rounded, better squad in that way. So it'll be interesting to actually see how they get on.
Yeah, that Peterborough game, that was the one that convinced John Eustace not to play football, wasn't it? And and I think a lot of the recruitment, or a lot of the talk, maybe not the recruitment, a lot of the talk had been done around how Blues Eustace was going to try and evolve the style. And then 3-0 down. Was it 3-0 down in 20 minutes? And
15 minutes, I think.
Yeah, and then it was like, right, back to the Roundheads and playing percentage football, which had ramifications further in the season, didn't it? Styles of football. So, yeah, hopefully nothing quite as sort of pivotal tomorrow from West Brom. But yeah, West Brom are, they're having a difficult summer, aren't they? They've lost Thomas Asante, who's gone to Coventry. I think Ukaya Kushlu looks like he's on his way if he hasn't already gone as well.
He has gone.
Kit Prey as well. He's gone, and they've brought in Devante Cole from Barnsley. So I think it'll potentially be his first game for Albion tomorrow. So that'll be interesting. It's. I think the significance for me is, if we are viewing it as a dress rehearsal, is what side, what first team, what 11 Chris Davies puts out. And we've sort of kicked around a few ideas about that, haven't we? I think, are we set in the fact that it's, at the risk of getting into formation soup, are we set in the fact that it's going to be 4-2-3-1? Or, as Chris Davies likes to call it, a 4-3-3? But, let's save the debate about pivots for another time.
Yeah, on paper, I mean, certainly to our eyes, it's a 4-2-3-1, isn't it? I suppose in especially in the Walsall friendly, I did notice that Jordan James played quite a chunk away forward compared to Sung Ho Peck, and was almost level with Willem Willemsen at times. That's gonna get me a few times this season, that name, isn't it?
We're going to call him Thor.
Yeah, he might as well. He was level with Thor on occasions, wasn't he? So it did look like a 4-3-3 as well. But at times, I mean, when they're attacking, it looks like a back three. So there's so much flexibility, as we've said all pre-season. But the framework of it, what we're going to go with anyway, is a 4-2-3-1, because our tiny minds can understand that one.
Exactly. Yeah, indeed. Yeah. I mean, the back four probably picks itself now, doesn't it? I think with the goalkeeper. Let's start with the goalkeeper, actually, because we were having a chat off air about goalkeeper. You think Bailey Peacock-Farrell has got his nose in front as the number one? Nose in front, or has won the race?
I think he's won the race. I mean, it's been a good race. Two very evenly matched goalkeepers. The noises I got at the start of the pre-season camp was that Peacock-Farrell probably had the edge at the beginning of the season. My own feeling on it was initially that Allsop would play, because he's obviously probably more familiar with this style, or having played it more recently than Peacock-Farrell has at Hull. But Peacock-Farrell the younger goalkeeper, probably the goalkeeper can grow with Blues. And I think, by the looks of it, by the last couple of pre-season games, particularly that Walsall one where, there were 2 11s, weren't there? There was one first team 11 that went to Walsall and played there, and there was a second 11 that went to Aldershot. And I don't think Chris Davies would have sent Ryan Allsop to Aldershot if he was then going to play him with the back 4 that played at Walsall the following week in the dress rehearsal. So, Peacock Farrell played that game and he played really well. He made two double saves in that game. The first one from Charlie Lakin was superb early on. So I think Peacock Farrell has the edge.
Yeah, I agree. I think we'll come on to this, I think, in another podcast, but I think it is going to be quite a live competition right the way through the season, to be fair. But Peacock Farrell, the back 4 then does seem to pick itself, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Doesn't it? I think you've gone. I haven't even got it in front of me, but I would imagine you've gone Laird right back, Cochrane left back, Sanderson and Bielik in the middle. Which Christoph Clara might feel some kind of way about signing for a pretty big fee, and then they're not starting automatically. But I suppose you would say that Sanderson and Bielik have done well together in pre-season. They're sort of integral into the patterns of play, aren't integrated into patterns of play, whereas Clara is probably just, a little bit more of a new arrival and probably, let's say, 2 weeks behind in terms of his integration, if not his conditioning. That as we said, that seems to pick itself.
Yeah, and I think we've both been massively impressed by Sanderson in pre-season. And one thing I will point to, in the games that Sanderson and Bielik played together at centre-back last season, I don't think Blues lost. I'm pretty sure there weren't many of them. There were, I think, 5 or 6. But when they actually played together, I don't think Blues lost. They played the Stoke game. They won that one, and then they would have played.
Mowbray put them together, didn't he?
Mowbray did, but then they were broken up, weren't they, quite quickly because Sanderson got injured, didn't he? Yeah. I think they only played 1 or 2 league games together at that time, and they were obviously reformed by Rout at the end of the season and played 4 games together, and Blues won 2, drew 2, so and kept I think 3 clean sheets. So they're clearly a partnership that has worked, and hopefully it can still work. But like you said about Clara, he's not signed to sit on the bench, but then again, there will be enough games for everyone to get a lot of games this season.
Yeah, indeed. Your double pivot, well, it's not going to be a double pivot, is it? But, as I said, let's not get into the grass on that one. You've gone Peck and Leonard, obviously JJ being the one that sort of doesn't play tomorrow if this is right. Peck, obviously, because Peck is, as we said, arguably one of the better players one of the best players, if not the best player in League One. History ever to play in the English third tier. Obviously Mark Leonard. We need to see Mark Leonard, don't we?
We do definitely. And Jordan James has played every pre-season game, and he's played very well in pre-season. I don't think this is saying Jordan James is not starting against Reading. I think this is saying that Mark Leonard needs a chance to play alongside Sung Ho Peck, because let's be honest, Jordan James is a very much live transfer situation, isn't he? He could, if a bid comes in that meets Blues demands in the next week, Jordan James could be on his way, and there are enough clubs interested in him at this point to believe that could happen. So I think Mark Leonard needs a game in the first 11, having played at Aldershot last week, and I think it's a good opportunity. If this, in my eyes, I think this will be the midfield, because I think we both said a couple of times that we expect JJ to move on. So I think we need to see it now. If JJ is still here in 2 or 3 weeks, then fair enough. He probably will force his way back into the 11. But at the moment, for this game in particular, and potentially against Reading, I would like to see Leonard and Peck play together.
Yeah, indeed. I think if JJ is still around for any extended period, then he would probably give Davies that tactical flexibility of becoming, not being a 6 but becoming an 8, and then going and supporting attack, which maybe Leonard is more comfortable deeper line potentially. So but that's probably a conversation that will be taken out of our hands. You're attacking 3, Miyoshi, Willemsen and Hansen. The only I just wonder how live the contest between Hansen and Dembele is. Dembele would be a sensational impact substitution, as we've said previously.
Yeah.
But I just wonder, if there's interest in Dembele, I wonder if Blues put him on the pitch anyway, just so people can, just so whoever's watching him can properly have a look. But I wouldn't be gobsmacked if Dembele starts tomorrow.
No, I wouldn't either. He played the game against Walsall, didn't he? So Chris Davies has seen enough in him to give him a chance. Dembele is, we've said loads of times on this podcast, he is supremely talented in the EFL. He is a top-end championship player when he puts it all together. I think Hansen probably provides a little bit better structure to the way that Blues want to play. I think he plays that role a little bit more kind of. I suppose he does both sides better at the moment, doesn't he? Dembele probably is a more kind of talented, free-flowing attacker than Hansen is when he gets into the final third. But does he do enough going back to support Cochrane? I'm not sure he does at the moment. So I think that's what we saw against Walsall. So I think Hansen probably deserves that chance. One thing I will throw at you, another one. Is there a live competition for the number 10 role? Because
massively. Yeah.
We're all kind of, obviously Willemson is going to start the season. I think we all think that now. But Tyler Roberts in the moments I've seen him pre-season has looked very good. He's looked fit and sharp. If Tyler Roberts stays fit, he will get into the team. We saw enough of him last season when he played against Coventry in that game. That was one of the best performances by a Blues player, I thought, last season when Tyler Roberts played against Coventry. So he's talented enough. He's played the Premier League, 2 years ago. He's had a rotten run of injuries in the last 2 years. If he gets himself fit and stays fit, he will no doubt force his way into that Blues 11.
Well, I'll throw Ramel Donovan at you as well.
Yeah.
There's, and even potentially Miyoshi if Chris Davies decides he wants somebody else on the right potentially. So it's arguably the most contested position on the pitch or in Blues squad. I think what we have to say is we have to say that Blues have spent a lot of money on Willemson.
Yeah.
And I don't know necessarily that they're in their planning is to spend, what is it? Is it 4 million euros that's been quoted or something like that?
Yeah, I feel like that.
Something like that. Stick him on the bench and play homegrown Ramel Donovan. That I don't know that that's necessarily the sort of line of thinking there. But and like you said, I think I thought right at the end of the season, let's have a good summer for Tyler Roberts and see where we are, in August time. So I'd have. Listen, I'm developing a bit of a man crush on Willemson. I have to admit, I like anyone tall that can play football properly, and when they're left-footed, even more so. I just thought he was next level against Shrewsbury, albeit in a pre-season game and at the end of July against Shrewsbury. But I'm really excited to see what he can bring. So. Willemson has got the shirt for me now, but as you say, very, very live contest.
Yeah,
and it's Alfie May up front, isn't it? For now, I know Blues are trying to bring in another striker, i.e. Jay Stansfield or another. But May seems head and shoulders, and is it 3 pre-season goals already?
He does look. He looks like the perfect foil for Willemson, or Willemson looks like the perfect foil for him. I mean, so many times in the Walsall game, May would drop deep and he does like to move around the pitch. He doesn't, Chris Davies said after the game that he doesn't want the 9 to be stuck as a 9.
Pinned, against 2 centre-backs. Yeah.
He wants the 9 to move. And May also isn't the sort of player that you want to let be pinned by 2 centre-backs. You want him to move around because physically he's not going to dominate centre-backs. Whereas Willemson might, when he took up that position, 6'3", big, powerful guy. When crosses coming into the box, he might dominate centre-backs and score headed goals. Certainly looking at his highlights for Go Ahead Eagles last season, he did have some success from that route inside the box and scored 7 goals. So that's very interesting, the flexibility between those 2 players to swap positions and May go deep and Willemson take up the 9 role. So they look like a good pairing.
Yeah, Willemson actually runs beyond as well, doesn't he? Yeah. He doesn't just replace May and go and stand by the centre backs. He actually runs in behind, which which is something I don't think we've seen many 10s do for Blues, to be honest. John Terrell potentially being the last one that I thought was decent at that. Which brings us on to our winners of pre-season. Who's had, I don't know if we can say it's the best pre-season, but who's sort of improved their standing or their reputation or their lot with Blues, do you feel, most this pre-season?
I think we'll both agree Dion Sanderson has done himself the world of good in pre-season. Whether it's having the captaincy taken off from whatever, or wanting to prove people wrong a little bit after the way last season ended, or win people over again, I think he's done really well. I think he's looked really sharp in pre-season. He's clearly key to the way, some of the way Chris Davies wants to play tactically as well, because so many times in pre-season we've seen Blues work the ball on the left, work it over to the right, where Sanderson has been ready to hit that big diagonal switch, and he is very good at that pass. He's outstanding at that pass, and he's found it too, whether it's Hansen or Dembele on the left wing. He's found them plenty of times. He missed a couple at Walsall last week, which was a surprise, but that's going to be a weapon for Blues this season. I think that switch of play from Sanderson. He's done really well every game, and we've said he's keeping obviously a big money signing out the team in Clara, but Sanderson, we must remember, was a big money signing himself last summer, wasn't he, for $2 million from Wolves? So this feels like Dion Sanderson doesn't want to play League One, does he? He's a player who should be in the Championship, but ultimately he had a poor end to last season, and that contributed to Blues going down. So hopefully it can be one of many players who right the wrongs and lead Blues back into the Championship.
Yeah, I've got to say, I thought it was a very long back for him after that relegation and everything else that went with it. And I wonder if Blues have thought that as well, and going out and spending money on Clara, and obviously they looked at a couple of others as well. And I wonder if Sanderson has just raised a few eyebrows from within sort of the Henley complex as well. Been very impressed with his distribution. Not just those diagonals, though. I think he's played neatly into midfield a few times as well. Clearly, he's in a world now where he looks up and he knows where Peck or JJ or potentially Mark Leonard is going to be, because they're being so well drilled in those patterns, aren't they? So I think he's obviously benefited from that as well. So Sanderson good. I'll throw another one at you. Ethan Laird. I think Ethan Laird has had a really strong pre-season. Now I'll just sort of rewind a little bit and go back to that interview. Which game was it, Alex? Was it Cardiff?
I think it was Cardiff. Yeah, the 1-0 against Cardiff.
Yeah, when St Andrews was as drab and sort of moribund as I've ever seen it after that game, as relegation really, did sort of feel like a very, very real prospect. I have told this story before, but you and I sat in a press conference with Ethan Laird, and he just didn't seem to get it, did he? He didn't seem to get the fact that Blues were in a real bad situation, and for all the positivity that he brings, it was just like, we need some reality here. So I think in our minds, we felt he needed to grow up a little bit. Maybe, or I don't know. Is that right?
I don't know. I feel like he's got this massively positive persona, hasn't he, Ethan Laird? And I don't think he ever wants to kind of veer away from it. And that's right or wrong. But like you say, I think reality was needed and perspective was needed at that time, because I think we were 3 games out for the end of the season, or 4 games out, and Blues were in the absolute mess. Yeah. So I don't think we or fans wanted somebody to come out and say, I really believe we'll get out of this. I've got absolute confidence that we'll get out of this, and be overwhelmingly positive when we've just watched Tripe for 90 minutes and watched Blues get beaten by a team that in Cardiff, and I don't want to go back to Cardiff because we've mentioned them a few times in this podcast, but they were awful last season. I have no idea how they finished where they finished. But, their goal difference said it all. Without set pieces, Cardiff would have been in a relegation battle as well. Laird, I think he had a point to prove this pre-season, and I think he's proven it a little bit. He was named one of the captains for that first game against Paderborn, wasn't he? So he's obviously won over Chris Davies in terms of his leadership, and that is something that's been mentioned by the managers previously. And I think he's been really good throughout pre-season. We mentioned, off air before we came on, he's actually been central to the way Davies has set the team up tactically in some aspects as well. in the way they've moved the ball forward, in the way he's combined with Miyoshi. I do think him and Miyoshi has the potential to be an outstanding partnership on that right side because they're so different. Miyoshi wants to come inside and it just creates that space for Laird to overlap, and he's great at that. Obviously, the question with Laird is keeping himself fit. He's been fit throughout pre-season, which will help him. I don't think he was fit throughout the whole of last pre-season. I think there was an issue towards the end. So fingers crossed he comes to that West Brom game and can kick on. But yeah, I've been impressed with Laird. When Laird's at it, you're always impressed with him. We say this, he should be a top-end Championship right back, probably low-end Premier League, has the ability to get back into the Premier League. He just needs a consistent season in League One. He needs to stomach a season in League One and just knuckle down and have a really good season.
And actually, the positivity and upbeat nature, it sits very well, doesn't it, in pre-season? And when you're at the start of a journey.
Yeah, because you can all win the league now, Brian. Everyone can win the league in pre-season.
But to see patterns of play sort of built around his athleticism at right back, I think that underlines just how important he is. One minor quibble, well, it's not minor actually, it's quite important, is the distribution and the sort of the final ball into the box. Obviously, I think he's got 2 assists already, actually, hasn't he? I think he got one for JJ at Shrewsbury, and obviously, a really tenacious one for Alfie May against Rangers.
And one against Moors as well. One against Moors for Alfie.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So the assists are there, but I think there could be even more. Ethan Laird come a long way, and I'm really quite excited to see what he can do in League. See what he will do in League One if he's fit.
Definitely, the assist tally does need to improve. We've said that a few times. For all his attacking qualities, I think Cody Drame got more assists than him last year, and actually looked more a threat in the final third. So that's a big thing for him. Another one for different reasons, Ramel Donovan. Obviously 17 years old, played 10 times the first team last year. A couple of starts. He's looked really good in the moments he's been given in pre-season. We're not expecting Ramel to start the first game of the season now. Williamson is on board, but early pre-season games, I thought he was really good. Having spoken to Chris Davies about him, normally managers tend to shy away from questions about young players. He hasn't done that at all. He's clearly been taken in by Ramel Donovan and wants to keep him around the first team this season and give him minutes. And I genuinely think, he might get 10 to 15 starts if Blues play 50 plus games this season. I think he might get 30, 35 games if he stays around the first team for the whole season, which you would expect he will. So he's been a massive positive for me in pre-season as well.
Yeah, indeed. Not just with all the technical ability and we all know his outrageous skill with some of the goals he was scoring for the 21s last season, but because of the buy-in out of possession as well, and it's all going to start with the press, isn't it? And Chris Davies has actually spoken and praised Ramel for not just being the typical young flair player, but actually accepting the responsibility that goes with playing in a side like Blues are going to play. A couple of other names, and we don't necessarily need to sort of go as deep on them. I think Christian Bielik, I've put him down as a winner. I actually think Blues are a winner in keeping Christian Bielik. And because we both expect him to be the captain, don't we? And you've also been impressed with Siriki Dembele's response to last season's relegation.
Yeah, definitely. Most people would have expected Dembele to be one of the people shown the door, I think, at the start of the summer window. But Chris Davies has given everyone a clean slate, and he said he would. And Dembele has clearly impressed him, because we're at a stage now where Chris Davies would like to keep him around. So and make that a live competition between him and Emil Hansen for that left wing position. We've said a million times, I think I said it earlier on the podcast, that Dembele is supremely talented in the Championship, let alone League One. I think last time he was in League One, he got 20 plus goal contributions with Peterborough. So if he can force his way into that starting 11, you'd back him to keep his place. He does need to marry it up. He needs to prove now that if Blues get promoted, I don't want to get ahead of myself, if Blues get promoted, that he is their left winger in the Championship and he can do both sides. But why would you not want a player of Siriki Dembele's talent in your squad if he is bought into the way Chris Davies wants to do things?
Yeah, indeed. So we've done the winners. There have been people that we've called losers of pre-season whose stock's fallen. Maybe it's been a struggle for poor Lee Buchanan, hasn't it? You know, a pre-season injury is the stuff of nightmares, and then you see your replacement Alex Cochrane come in and really kind of be the left back that I think he'd probably even Mowbray, maybe even Rooney sort of wanted. You know, that really advanced, adventurous left back.
Yeah, they're very different left backs, aren't they? I think that's obviously why Blues have gone and signed Cochrane. You've got Buchanan, who very much in possession is that left-sided centre back. You've got Cochrane who can do that, but also he gives you that left-sided central midfield option if you want to kind of line up in that 2-3-5 shape that some managers talk about in possession. So it's been a difficult pre-season for Buchanan in that he has got injured, and probably I think even before the injury, it was looking like Cochrane would win the battle to be left back at the start of the season. Again, Buchanan will get enough games over the course of a season, but it's been tough for him because he would have wanted a fully fit pre-season where he can fight back in the battle for left back. And I like Buchanan. I really like him as a player and a person. Yeah, it's been tough to watch him kind of get this injury at the worst time in pre-season. But I'm sure he'll come back and give Cochrane a run for his money.
Yeah, indeed. And the other one that's probably worth mentioning is the Manny Longello experiment is clearly over, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think it. I've always been a bit of a not a champion of Longello, but I've always felt that there's something in there that just needs teasing out, given the right position and a fair wind. I think Blues are moving in too quickly in another direction now, aren't they? So Longello, I mean, we're slightly surprised he hasn't gone yet, but not evolved at all this pre-season.
No, he's been completely frozen out, hasn't he? And there was obviously that bit accepted from Barnsley 3 weeks ago now, I think 3 weeks ago. And he's obviously not gone there because they haven't been able to reach an agreement early on. Barnsley have now, I think yesterday, signed another left back. So whether that changes their position on Longello, I'm not sure, but it probably gives him a little kind of a reminder that he probably needs to move quickly if he wants that to happen. Barnsley, on the face of it, would look a decent move for him, I think. Another League One club that are probably going to be challenging at the right end of the table. I think they look like they're gearing up to play a back three, which would mean he could play as a left wing back, and I believe that's his best position. But yeah, he whether it's Barnsley or someone else, he does need to move on this summer because he's going to get absolutely no game time with the two left backs Blues have got ahead of him now.
Yeah, indeed. Should we move on to the questions?
Yeah,
indeed. Thank you all for all of your questions. As Alex said, not been able to get to all of them, but we tried to cover sort of many of the relevant areas. First one from regular listener and contributor John Ramsey. Hi, John. Thanks for joining us. John says, you watched the training session. Was it all Davies or were the other coaches involved? And what were their roles? And then the second part is about Sean Rush. So we'll split those up into two. You've seen more training than I have. What's the sort of the division of labour, would you say, in terms of the coaching stuff?
I think Davies is definitely the leader, isn't he? I think you can see that from watching them. I think we'd have been foolish not to think that a person who has been coaching for the last 15 years at Swansea, Liverpool, Celtic, Leicester, Tottenham is not going to be leading on the training ground. Whether he's the manager or not, he is going to lead in the training ground. He does give a fair amount of responsibility to his assistants. If for example the session we watched the other day, the start of it was about building through the phases, and at one end of the pitch you had Ashley Cole marshalling one team or defensive unit and marshalling how they played forward. Other end, Ben Petty was doing the same thing. So with Davies in the middle, kind of orchestrating everything. He is clearly micromanaging everything. I don't know whether that will change as he becomes kind of probably more comfortable that the players are getting his messages and taking them on board and actually don't constantly need them reinforcing. He might be a little bit more loose in the way he coaches and allow other people to take more of a leading role. But at the moment, whenever I watched it, certainly Chris Davies has been the leader and the dominant voice.
Yeah, at the risk of going back to NFL jargon. They're kind of installing a playbook, aren't they? And Davis is the one that's sort of doing that. But yeah, Ashley Cole did run sort of little subsections when we were there the other day as well. So yeah, that seems to be.
And just sorry to jump in. I'm told as well that Cole's still taking a prominent role on set piece coaching. And to be fair, he'd probably be glad the club have signed some units this summer. And obviously, Willemson and Clara both well over 6 foot. Then you can throw Sanderson, Bielik into the mix. So yeah, the team should be more of a threat and more competent at set pieces this season.
Yeah, indeed. And the Sean Rush thing. John asked, is it right that Sean Rush has left the club? No one said that officially, have they?
No.
But he's not been present this pre-season. That's right, isn't it?
Yeah, that's correct. We haven't seen him, and are probably working on the basis that he has moved on.
And there are people doing his role, aren't there? So yeah.
Well, yeah, Nathan Gardner, who's been brought in from Spurs, where Chris Davies obviously worked in there. He's a first team coach, but he is also leading on the side of the fitness side and assisting the medical department as well, and kind of working on that. So he's very much heading up that kind of role now. And there's Darnie Patterson-Hughes who's been here for a few years, and working alongside Rush, but he's also working with Gardner and played a heavy role in the way the players prepare for their training sessions and obviously recover from them as well.
Yeah, indeed. Hopefully that answers that question. I'm sure there'll be a clarification from the club on those sorts of roles at some point. John Pierce, another regular listener and contributor. Thanks, John. Does anyone have any doubts about the manager? I never from day one, and I'd never actually heard of him. Now, after a few pre-season games and reports, I think it will be that we've been extremely lucky to get him. Alex, how ensconced on the Chris Davies hype train are you? I've said it numerous times. I'm impressed. You're in first class, aren't you?
I'm beyond there. Every time I hear him speak, I'm impressed. I think the managers Blues had last season had differing skill sets, I think. But Mowbray, for example, incredible interpersonal skills, could make someone who was at their lowest ebb in the morning feel brilliant by the afternoon. A great man manager, I suppose, as well, and also he married it up, to be fair, with the play on the pitch as well, teaching them patterns, and they look really good. Gail Rowett and John Eustace did give great organisation and structure on the coaching defensive side of things. I feel like Davies kind of has a little bit of it all. He's got a lot of kind of good qualities. This is only from speaking to him and seeing how the team have played in pre-season. They could go and get tanked 5-0 already on the opening day. I don't think that will happen. But, we need to judge it on the matches first and foremost. And to be honest, given the quality Blues have got, I've said it a couple of times, I don't think we're going to truly know how good this team is until it gets into the Championship. Some of these players might, absolutely cruise through League One and be outstanding. Some of them might disappoint us. I think Blues, we're not going to know how good someone like Willemson is in League One. He's clearly come to Blues on the basis that he's only going to be in this league for a year, and then he's going to be able to get into the Championship and show what he can really do, because that's a level more befitting of where he's played. There are a few others like that. Obviously, they've got to navigate League One first. Back to the question, which I've probably completely got around. I think Blues, in a way, are lucky to get him. I think
because he had options, didn't he?
Well, yeah, he
chose.
He could have.
Just whacked my microphone.
Absolute earthquake. That was Brian.
Just whacking my microphone. Sorry, I'm just getting on board the Chris Davies hype train.
So yeah, he could have gone to Swansea last year. I think he could have gone to Swansea a couple of times. He's come from Tottenham Hotspur. He would have got a good job elsewhere. He probably clearly has seen the vision of the Blues owners and where they actually want to go, which is the Premier League. Obviously, it seems a bit silly saying that while we're in League One, but they clearly want to go to the Premier League, and Chris Davies is getting in on the ground floor and wants to lead the whole journey. He's probably looked at, I hate to use the comparison because when we had Benjamin Blue on the podcast, he told us not to, but Ipswich, he might be looking at what Kieran McKenna has done and think, if I could do that, I'm suddenly going to have propelled myself from, a novice manager to somebody who, let's face it, at the start of the summer, God, every single club in the Premier League seemed to want Kieran McKenna. Manchester United, Chelsea are all linked with him before he signed the new deal at Ipswich. So, your stock can rise incredibly quickly. I think it's a sensible move for Davies to start his managerial career at Blues. And to be honest, it is only pre-season, but there haven't really been any negatives so far.
Yeah, indeed. What I would say is this is Chris Davies' time, isn't it? Pre-season is about coaching, and this is what Chris Davies is absolutely king at. This detailed installing of game plans and sort of building the machine. That's where he's really, really strong. What we haven't seen him tested yet is in a live game when the machine hasn't worked. And as the emotion comes into it, maybe the away support's a little bit unhappy, or a result has gone against them elsewhere, or a situation where a player's not been picked for 5 games and they're not happy. The management side of the other stuff, coaching's been superb so far, but that's all we've seen so far, isn't it? I think all we've seen. I'm not saying that's all that's gone on, because clearly he has done some managing, but doing it in the kitchen, when the pots are bubbling over, that'll be the real test. But at the moment, 0 alarm bells for me.
Yeah, no, I agree, and you make a good point, because in-game management is completely different, isn't it, as well? Like, Blues could be 1-0 down against Reading with 20 minutes to go, and then who does he bring off the bench? Which players did he choose? That's ultimately what we're going to judge him on, what fans are going to judge him on. So, I think we need to reserve our judgment until the season does start, or until we're 10 games in, although I don't make judgments after 10 games, again, because look where Blues were in the Championship last year after 10 games, and look what happened. Chris Davies, I don't want to say the jury's still out, but we've got to wait until he's had proper matches. We can't judge him now.
The Blue Machine has asked, do you have any concerns about the involvement of Alex Guerrero? Obviously, Guerrero is he is Tom Brady's aide. He's been brought in to oversee the conditioning and the nutrition and the sort of the 1%ers that go around being a professional athlete, hasn't he? Any issues there about a man who has kept Tom Brady playing NFL football until he was well into his 40s?
I think it's a good question, and I think the question probably refers to some things you can read online and about methods and the way that Alex Guerrero has done things. That's out there for people to look at. What he's done with Tom Brady is clearly exceptional, to get somebody playing at that level, physically able to play at that level till their mid-40s, 45, I think it was. That shouldn't be possible for somebody to have that career. And he's worked with a lot of other NFL players. I think the question mark for me over this is how can that be translated to football? When you look at the two body types, they're completely different. The movements are completely different. Footballers, for example, the position Brady plays, there's not a lot of explosive movement, is there? Football, there is a lot of explosive movement. And very different body types. Footballers are a lot lighter than the players that the Blues have, are a lot lighter than Tom Brady, and a lot smaller in some cases. So it's whether that can be kind of translated over to football. Reading a little bit about Guerrero and his background, he does like to dabble in other sports, and he's a fan of soccer. I don't think football. God, God, that's a cardinal sin, that, isn't it? He's a fan of football. It's whether that can be translated for me. I don't think being able to kind of tap into how Tom Brady kept himself at the top of his sport for 20, 25 years is a bad thing. I think that can only be a good thing.
Yeah, I think it's been lovely hearing you talk about NFL players. I
have no knowledge. I only know one NFL player, and he's a minority investor in Birmingham City.
I think if Guerrero is responsible for saying, they need that machine. Is that your dog's tail wagging? She's
scratching her, and she's sat on the chair. She's booting the chair, and I was shaking. I was like, "Is there an earthquake happening here?" As Brian whacked his hands down on the desk again.
I think if Guerrero's involvement is along the lines of, this element of nutrition could be improved. You need this bit of kit, or have you thought about, this side of conditioning, or, even down to, are we monitoring the players' sleep? A lot of elite athletes wear sleep bands while they're sleeping, and it records the depth and quality of their sleep. I think that's one thing. If Guerrero is going into the physio's room or whatever and saying, you need to do it that way, potentially, there could be some little bit of friction there. But I think that's a very minor point. And what I've been bemoaning a lack of expertise at Birmingham City for a long time. And if there's one thing that's been apparent under Knighthead, it's been the level of expertise they're bringing into the club in all departments. Yeah. We've spoken at length about how good Nick Smith is, and there are other appointments like that. So as long as it's managed okay, I have no reservations about there having been too much expertise. It's probably a really long-winded answer.
How long before they get sleep pods at the training ground, do you reckon?
It's possible. Yeah. I don't know how many double sessions. Blue, is this? Do you actually want me to answer this in a serious way, or
you can do what you want? I don't know. Most clubs, a lot of clubs have them now, especially Premier League clubs. And I'm sure Chris Davies will have worked at clubs that do have them at training grounds. So
yeah, it's possible. I don't know. I can't give you a number. John McGinley has asked: Is what Davies doing exactly what Rooney intended to implement, but didn't have the wherewithal to implement or convey it to the players? Because for all the transfer, there's still plenty on the squad from last season. I've been pondering this, John. This is a great question.
It's a great question.
There are similarities even down to the identity of the goalkeeper. Rooney was obsessed with Ryan Alsop, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And how if they got Ryan Alsop, everything would be okay. Is Chris Davies trying to play no fear football? To a degree, yes.
Yeah, those words are banned in Birmingham City conversations.
But you can see John's question, can't you?
You can.
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, because I remember after the Middlesbrough game, the first game that Rooney had, and it was absolute carnage, and I was like gobsmacked. So the next press conference, I was kind of asking him about it, and to be fair, he really answered it and opened up on kind of how he wanted Blues to look in possession, out of possession. And one of the things that he said, that in possession they could look like a 2-3-5. So he basically meant kind of two centre backs, one of your wingers, your right back would probably go and play as one of the front five and really offer width. Then maybe your left back could do the same on the side. You end up with three midfielders and your three attacking players if you had started in a 4-3-3, for example. And Blues could actually, in possession, line up something like that now. You could have Dion Sanderson and Bielik as your defenders. You could have Laird absolutely high on the right. You could have Cochrane just tucking into the left side of midfield alongside the two. You could have Miyoshi come in as a 10. Hansen properly wide on the left. And then you've got Willemsen in there as well behind Alfie May as a striker. So it could look quite similar. The idea could be quite similar. But again, the way it's coached is going to be really different. I don't think under Wayne Rooney it was coached anywhere near enough or well enough. That's what I will say. From what I've seen of Davies, I don't think he's going to leave anything to chance. He's absolutely relentless in the way he's coaching it. Everything, even down to the points that he brought across to us at the training ground in midweek, are so detailed. It's so clear the way he wants to do things. The messages are very consistent, which I think is also important. So I just think Chris Davies is a coach of 15 plus years. He's not had a football career as a player. He's been on the grass all that time. He's been learning. You're obviously going to be better at it than somebody who has had an extraordinary playing career and gone straight into management/coaching and had 3 years in it. Chris Davies had years to learn, and he's clearly very good at it.
And he's got a pre-season to implement, which Rooney didn't have. And also, you would say that Rooney was probably more of a manager and a figurehead. If you look at the Derby work, it was Liam Rossini that seemed to do the X's and the O's, to borrow yet more NFL jargon. But John's basic point about is, are there similarities? There absolutely are similarities.
Well, yeah, because that's the way that United have decided they want Blues to play.
Yeah, indeed.
They want to be a possession-based football, so this is the way it's going to happen.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, as tempted as I am to go down the old street of breathtaking naivety about opening up at Middlesbrough, I'm going to resist that temptation. Really. So it's Jim McGinley as well. I've been calling him John all the way through that. Dear me. Sorry, Jim. Thank you for that really good question. And final one from Wagner's Burner. I'm not sure that's his real name. Still can't see it happening, but if we sign Stansfield, does that cause a problem for May? I mean, Stansfield or no Stansfield, there is going to be competition coming into the team, isn't there? Or into the squad.
There is.
The team. Yeah.
There is 100%. I think the key with Stansfield coming in is it doesn't just present a problem for May if he does come, because Stansfield can play in all four of those front positions, and he probably doesn't want to play where Alfie May wants to play. Stansfield probably wants to play where Willemsen wants to play. He might want to play where Miyoshi's playing. He might want to play where Hansen or Dembele are playing. Stansfield, from every conversation I've had with him, he prefers to play not as the number 9, as one back. He's obviously got that in his game to play as the 9. He had to at times last season because, let's be honest, Blues didn't really have a viable alternative. But he would be a problem for all of those players, and I think that's what Blues want. They want really, really, really strong competition, and Stansfield would bring that for everyone, not just Alfie May. Yeah,
indeed. And we've spoken ad nauseum about not likely to happen, which is I still don't think it is. But I think what Blues will do in bringing in another striker, if you want to call it that position, is they'll look for a sort of maybe a different skill set or a different string to their sort of centre forward bow. So obviously we all want Jay Stansfield back at the club. And Wagner's Burner added, all for depth, but surely neither will stick around if they're not first choice. Same for Miyoshi. Should Stansfield play on the wing, or Willemsen if he plays 10? So that's a question really about the depth, isn't it? And Blues paying money for people who then are set on the bench. I mean, all we can say to that is there are 60 games, and there's still nearly a month of the transfer window to go, isn't it? Is that all we can say?
Yeah, there's a lot of games. I mean, if you're a footballer, look at the Blues squad, for example. Look at someone like Ethan Laird. Ethan Laird hasn't that many times played more than 35 games in a season. So if Ethan Laird hits his number of 35 to 40 games, which would be a decent return for him, then there are still going to be 15 to 20 games for whoever the right back is that Blues signed to deputise for him. So I think the sheer volume of games that Blues could have, like say, if you look at the league, 46 games, you look at the Bristol Street Motors competition, if Blues get to the final of that, 8 games. FA Cup, you'd expect Blues to get to the third round when the Championship and Premier League teams come in. So that's, again, 2 more games. So you've got 56 games there. You've got the Carabao Cup. You'd expect Blues to get to second or third round. There's 2 or 3 more games. All of a sudden, you're on 59 games. So there is going to be a lot of games, and players will get enough minutes, even if the front line is absolutely stacked with talent.
Don't forget the playoffs.
We're not going to the playoffs. We're not going to the playoffs. 100 points.
Right. Which brings us on to our prediction pod, which we'll do in a bit and release just before the season. Alex, thank you for your time. Everyone, all your listeners and contributors, thank you for your questions and your interest. Apologies, Jim, for calling you John. Jim McGinley, thank you for a brilliant question. Again, thanks for listening. Thank you all for your time, and it's a keep right on from both of us.